Well, Razorback fans, according to at least one major college football outlet, it looks like Sam Pittman's going to be staying for another year. Is it true? Let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Out of Bounds. You can catch every weekday afternoon from 1 to 4 on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Friday as we are getting closer to the weekend. And I know so much excitement surrounding all of the greatness that is of the Razorback Sports Weekend, mainly for basketball maybe, which we'll talk about later in the podcast. But football too, playing FIU. Man, can you imagine a game that has a stigma about it that nobody really cares about this game whatsoever? I mean, my goodness. I haven't found any Razorback fan that is looking forward to this game, that's excited about this game, that cares about this game, regardless. So we'll talk about that in tomorrow's podcast, I think, is actually getting into the game itself. But I wanted to bring up I'll call it a report, but it's actually maybe more of a thing that the sources are coming from from the University of Arkansas for 24/7 Sports. Now, for those of you who don't know, 24/7 Sports has a lot of great college football writers, and this was actually a joint effort. I believe it's from Brandon Marcello of 24/7 Sports, but either way, this was written yesterday morning, and I'm honestly surprised more people aren't talking about it because it's on their website, but maybe they don't have a subscription. But either way, they were talking about the different variations of the hot seat for certain coaches and certain teams right now in college football, and Sam Pittman, the Arkansas Razorback football coach, was brought up. And here's what they had to say about Sam Pittman. Now, trigger warning for some of you who are going to really get upset by this. Arkansas is expected to make dramatic changes to the offensive staff should Sam Pittman remain on as head coach. Sources tell 24/7 Sports. That means that a new offensive coordinator and mostly new offensive staff through 24/7 Sports is told that offensive line coach Cody Kennedy could remain on board as a close confidant to Sam Pittman. Pittman is believed to be safe at Arkansas, barring a terrible performance this week against FIU. Interim offensive coordinator Kenny Guyton, who served as receivers coach prior to the play calling elevation, picked up steam as a permanent replacement for fired OC Dan Enos. But that cooled substantially following the 48-10 loss last week to Auburn. We're expecting a philosophical change offensively and a much different looking staff after the 1-year transition from the Kendall Briles era failed miserably in Fayetteville. Again, that is 24/7 Sports reporting that. Now, if this was just anybody else or, anybody on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, I would blow it off as kind of like, okay, whatever. But these are coming from legitimate people that have legitimate sources that are actually legitimately in the know for college football. And I have a couple of reactions to this. First off, a lot of you may be reacting to this in a very angry way, being hacked off, being like, this is absurd, this is disgusting. How in the world? I'm done. I'm done with Sam Pittman. I'm done with Arkansas football. I'm done with Hunter Yurachek. Whatever, which, you are more than welcome to have that reaction because I can understand it, especially when you hear that looks like that he's going to be staying on. But I want to work through a couple of these things and a couple of these layers. First off, we'll start with the very beginning of the part and then go in an order here. It says they're supposed to be making dramatic changes to the offensive staff. That's not a shock or surprise. Everyone can understand why that's going to be happening. The offense has been terrible. You fire Dan Enos, and anytime that you have an offense that is so epically horrible, like what we've seen in this case, it makes sense to move on. It makes sense to move on and to just completely and totally blow the thing up. However, maybe the more surprising thing for some of you may be that 24/7 Sports is told that offensive line coach Cody Kennedy could remain on board as a close confidant to Sam Pittman. Now, what makes that so obscure is the fact that of all the things on the offense that have been bad this year, of course, the play calling and quarterback play have not been great. But the offensive line, without a doubt, has been the biggest thing that has struggled, not only on the offense, but on the team in general. The offensive line has struggled mightily and has been pretty consistently bad all season long. So to hear that Cody Kennedy, the offensive line coach, according to sources, would be the one that remains on board, I don't know. I feel like that's a bad look. And I have nothing against Cody Kennedy personally or anything like that. And honestly, I feel like Arkansas has, with Sam Pittman, who's an offensive line coach and has been for a long time, I would hope and pray that he actually knows who's good at the offensive line coaching spot, and I would hope that that means it's Cody Kennedy. But it's just kind of a bad look, you know? It's like, of all the offensive staff members that could be moving on, but the one you're keeping is Cody Kennedy, and the position that has struggled the most has been the offensive line. I'm not saying Cody Kennedy is the reason why it's been bad. I think that there's a lot of different parts and moving parts to it, but for that to be the move you make, I just don't know if that looks right. Because it's like, if that's your confidant, if that's the son you never had, if that's your boy, okay. But at the same time, are you really wanting to keep him on just because he's your guy when the offensive line has had some major problems? I just don't know if that's the route you want to go, and I don't know if that's the thing that you want to do if you're Sam Pittman when you're going to be overhauling the entire offense. So that's number one. Number two is that, people are like, oh my goodness, like, you telling me that they have to lose to FIU in order to get rid of this guy? You kidding me? Like, what are the chances of that? Like, that's such a far-fetched thing. FIU is not very good. Well, hold on. It says in this report that Pittman is believed to be safe at Arkansas, barring a terrible performance this week against FIU. That does not say barring a loss to FIU. Barring a terrible performance. Because let's be honest, Arkansas could win this game 10-7. And that's a terrible performance. And that could be enough, would be enough, should be enough to move on. So for those of you who are losing your mind saying that a loss to FIU, it should happen no matter what, it could be a bad performance by the team. Like a performance like you had against Auburn or like you had against Mississippi State. One of those, that would be the ultimate awful performance, and that's when you move on. So just because, it's not that they have to take an L. Obviously, that would make it pretty official. But it's just talking about a terrible performance. That could be the case, and that could be enough to where Arkansas feels like they want to move on. So, and then the third and final part is when they talk about Kenny Guyton, who had picked up steam to be the replacement, but then after the performance against Auburn, kind of reverted back a little bit, which is making sense. But then it says, quote, we're expecting a philosophical change offensively and a much different looking staff after the 1-year transition from the Kendall Briles era, failed miserably in Fayetteville. And see, that's what's going to have to look like. If you stick with Sam Pittman, which, man, that's going to be, if you go 4-8 this year even, to stick with Sam Pittman, you're going to have to really, really, really hit a home run with the offensive staff and the offensive coordinator. And I don't really know, like, I'm not saying this person would come here. I'm not. But I'm saying that if you got somebody like Cliff Kingsbury, like just say if they got him and he came on campus, like that would be enough, I feel like, to get people excited, to get people feeling good about it, say, okay, let's see what this is about. But barring like a name like that, or at least an epic offensive coordinator hire like that, I just don't know how you're going to be able to have any sort of excitement going into next season. Again, this is all assuming that Arkansas goes 4-8 and keeps Sam Pittman. You're going to have to overhaul the whole offensive staff. I get it. I agree with it. You should. I mean, it's been pathetic how bad the offense has been. But I just don't know if you want to do it in the way that, you just bring in some random guys and you don't even know who's going to be quarterback. Is KJ going to be back? You don't know Rocket Sanders. Is he going to be back? Like, who's going to be back? Who's not? What about the wide receivers? Tight ends like Luke has? Who knows? There's just a lot of question marks surrounding it. But if you are going to go an offensive coordinator route and a new one, my suggestion, not that they need it, is to hire an offensive coordinator that you really, really like and say, okay, bring in your guys. Who do you want? Okay, if you want Cody Kennedy to stay, okay. Or do you want a new wide receiver coach, or do you want to keep Kenny Guyton? I mean, what do you want? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? let that be the case for the new offensive coordinator. Because that's what Sam Pittman is about. He's about the management. He's about putting guys. It's like, all right, let's see. But don't base your offensive coordinator hire on simply, well, if you're going to come in, you gotta keep this guy. Let him have the guys that he wants if you truly want to make this work. So that's the latest. As according to 24/7 Sports, again, it looks like Sam Pittman, barring a terrible performance against FIU, will be the coach next year for Arkansas. I just don't know how much excitement's going to be surrounding that. And it's sad, too, because I was thinking about it, too, real quick before we move on. But, like, if that's the case, it might be the least exciting offseason maybe of all time. Like, there's not going to be a lot of energy. There's not going to be a lot of pumped up excitement for next year. Coming off a 4-8 season. And, you know, it's really going to be hurting from that perspective. But that's the latest. That's the latest. We're going to talk about a little bit about recruiting and, you know, with the situation with Sam Pittman here in just a second. But folks, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business, and you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Just go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. And then when you go there, add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and who you'd like to hire. That's why small businesses have ranked LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus their leading competitors. And LinkedIn Jobs will help you find those qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster and for free. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. We're also brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. As we know that we've been appreciating them being a part of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast for so long now, but now is the time for your game changer of the week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like my guy, L. Ellis. We'll talk about a little basketball for him, as he was able to have 17 points, 8 assists, and 0 turnovers in Razorback basketball game earlier this week. He has completely changed the game, just like Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. And they make a non-alcoholic beer that actually tastes good. And which is really something to say, because a lot of people are very skeptical about these things and think like, oh, you know, what's the point, whatever. They're great tasting, they're award-winning, and they have beat out full-strength beers in global competitions because they brew over 50 styles of craft, non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, Goldens, Sours, and so much more. And they're fit for all times. And the best thing about it, you never have to worry about any hangovers. You can find Athletic in store, online, and at bars all around the country. And they can be at a store near you. And if you go to online at athleticbrewing.com, you can find them there. So first-time customers, make sure you use that promo code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions, and conditions do apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. This was actually a question that was asked to me about recruiting and, you know, transfer portals and things like that for Arkansas Razorback football right now. Because for those who didn't know, Courtney Crutchfield ended up he ended up decommitting from Arkansas a couple weeks ago. That was a big loss for Arkansas. Don't know where exactly he is going to go, but, he ain't here. But another thing people were worried about was Charlie Collins, who was another big-time commitment for Arkansas, the defensive lineman, where some people were saying that, he's about to flip to Ole Miss. He's about to go over to Ole Miss. Ole Miss insiders even were saying it. Well, Charlie Collins tweeted out yesterday saying, I'm not sure who y'all talked to, but it wasn't me. I'm committed to Arkansas, woo pig suey. So that's good to hear, and that's good to see that that's the case. But the big thing is that people are bringing up, okay, when you have a coach in the situation like Sam Pittman is in, when people are starting to fall off and people are starting to say, you know what, I'm not into this anymore. I don't want him on the, I don't want to be a coach anymore, and all these random pressures are on him and everything. It becomes like, okay, so what do you do? How do you recruit? How do you make it to where people can trust you that you're going to be the coach, that you are the man for the job and everything? And then if you're not, then how, like if you end up leaving, like say if Sam Pittman ends up getting fired or whatever, how do you keep that recruiting class intact or anything like that? It's chaotic because anytime you have a coaching change, it's chaotic. It's chaotic across the board. Everyone starts freaking out and they really don't know what to do with themselves. And they start just assuming the worst, that everything's going to be going that way. Here's the thing. Recruiting is a very interesting thing in the way of most of the time it's for coaches. They commit to coaches while also committing to schools. And in most cases, not every case, but in most cases. And then when they don't, they can decommit or whatever. But the new coach is going to come in, or a new coach can come in and be able to reaffirm those commitments from those recruits or be able to bring up the excitement from their own side of things. We've seen it happen a few times, actually. Because anytime coaching changes have happened, sometimes the recruiting classes actually ended up being one of the best things ever. I remember when Houston Nutt got fired and he basically mailed it in recruiting, didn't care. Petrino came in and ended up signing one of, if not the best recruiting class Arkansas has had, at least here in the modern era, and got a lot of those players, Joe Adams and Tyler Wilson, guys of that class to come in and play for Arkansas. Brett Bielema, say what you want about him, but after Petrino was fired and John L. Smith took over and it was kind of all in the air, Brett Bielema was able to get a great class with Alex Collins, with Hunter Henry, Denver Kirkland, guys of that stature that came in and were big-time players for Arkansas. And so the point is that anytime you have a coaching change, in a lot of cases, the recruiting class can actually be better. It can actually be really, really put forth and made in a better position. But because of the transfer portal, I think that even opens up more opportunities because suddenly there may be certain coaches where there's an excitement and energy that players maybe want to go over there and join them. That's all if a coach leaves and a new coach comes in. But since, as we talked about, it looks like Sam Pittman, barring any crazy bad performance against FIU, is going to be the coach of Arkansas at least next year. How do you keep those recruits excited? How do you keep them believing in you? Well, it depends on the position group, for one. I think defensively, a lot of those guys will and stay because the defensive staff, I think, has done a great job, assuming you keep that defensive staff intact. But if you overhaul the offense, that's going to bring in a lot of excitement and a lot of energy to it. And depending on who you hire, there may be some guys that, say if he's a current offensive coordinator at some other school, there may be some commitments that he might be able to bring in with him. And to say, hey, he was committed to us, but now I want him to bring over here and be committed to me. Maybe the style is able to allude more so to the style that that player is personally attached to. Maybe there's that. Maybe there's some big-time transfer that is able to come because of the school that he knows or whatever. Or maybe the school he's at is going to transfer in. And then other transfers say, man, that's a big-time player that's going there. I want to go there too. I want to be a part of it. So there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different things could end up making it to where, hey, if you don't recruit at times, when you're about to get fired, that's one thing. But if you're staying on and you're still working hard and you're still trying to get it done, there's still plenty of reasons to have energy surrounding it to be able to push it to where it may end up being okay. Not saying it will, but it could end up being that way. But unfortunately for Arkansas, I don't even know if that's going to be enough. Because, again, if Sam Pittman's going to be the guy, he better not only have a great offensive staff put together, but he better do a heck of a job in the transfer portal. I don't even care about high school recruiting classes. Forget that. Portal. Because you got 1 year. If Sam Pittman's going to be the coach, he's got 1 year. And so he better be able to hit that portal and better be able to hit that portal hard. I want to see all the NIL they can possibly get go into that transfer portal. I think it should be that way anyways. But, again, that's just me. We'll do a little bit of talking about Razorback basketball here in just a second. Folks, I got to tell you about Prize Picks. Because Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, and they are the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Think about like basketball season being here, and it's also at the same time football's going on. Well, now you can pick a combination of projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. A league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different groups and different sports and different leagues. For example, you want a LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made plus receptions. Boom. There you go. They even have a reboot policy that makes your entries able to stay even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second half, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So you got to check it out today. It's really easy. Just go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use promo code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use promo code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. It is Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, and we know Razorback basketball is going to be tuning up tonight, actually, and what will be their final non-conference game before they get into the battle for Atlantis next week, which is going to be a huge one. We know they play Stanford, and then if they win that one, they will either play the winner or the loser, depending on how it goes, against Memphis and Michigan. So some really good teams that are in that realm, and Arkansas could be one of those teams that ends up having a lot of success there. But they got to get back and got to get through UNC Greensboro. Now, for those of you who are not too familiar, UNC Greensboro is a team that gave Arkansas all that they wanted last year. And it actually was a really close game, and they're a really well-coached team. And then you even throw into the mix that UNC Greensboro gave Vanderbilt all they wanted. I'm not saying Vanderbilt's a great team, but still almost beat Vanderbilt. Like, it was a very close game to the end. So Arkansas has to play better than what they did against Old Dominion. Eric Musselman knows that. The team knows that. And I think that they're going to be able to take care of business. But this game is going to be the end of that four-game homestead. And the tip-off is set for 7 p.m., and it's going to be on the SEC Network Plus. So for those of you who are asking about the TV stuff, it's on stream. Just find it. It's on stream. That's the best way to do it. Third meeting between Arkansas and UNC Greensboro in the second as many years. They won the previous two meetings. That is Arkansas. Arkansas beat them in 89-74 back in 2001, and then last season 65-58. So again, ended up being a close game. And what was funny is that the first meeting, which would be Nolan Richardson's 500th win, I was actually at that game. Gennaro Pargo had 19 points and 18 points from J.J. Sullinger. How about some throwbacks there? Both teams took 59 shots, and Arkansas made 30, while UNCG made 20. Spartans kept it close by making 13 three-pointers compared to 6 by the Hogs. Can you believe that? It's almost like they do that every single time. Last year, Arkansas rallied because they were down by 5 points at halftime, and they were able to rally. And Trevin Brazil, unfortunately, this is the game that many of you remember, he went down. Yeah. So a little bit of a different thing, and hopefully a little bit of spiritness from, hopefully there's not bad mojo or bad voodoo or anything like that. But Arkansas was able to take care of business. And Nick Smith Jr. was actually the one that led the way, where he scored 16 of his 22 points in the second half. And also Mekhi Mitchell getting a double-double, just like he did with 13 and 14. And then Devo got 10 and 10. So two different double-double players in that game. Eric Musselman's 2 wins away from having 100 wins as a Razorback coach. Isn't that crazy? 2 wins away. And this is only his 4th season, right? No, 5th season. So I'd say it's a pretty good average so far. Devo needs 34 points to get to 1,000 points in his career, as well as Caleb Battle needs 74 points to get to 1,000 points in his college career. So a bunch of guys getting close. Devo goes for 34. That'd be pretty cool. I don't think Caleb Battle is going to go for 74 in this one, but hey, you never know. You never know. So Trevin Brazil is ranked 6th right now in the NCAA and block shots for the season, where he's averaging 3 per game. I'd say that's pretty good. He's got 9 of them so far. And Caleb Battle is also leading the SEC in three-point percentage at 61.5%. So hopefully that all keeps up. But it should be a great game. If Arkansas takes care of business in this game, which I expect them to do, they'll be 4-0, heading into the battle for Atlantis, where it really gets crazy, really gets wild, and hopefully Arkansas takes care of business in that game as well. But appreciate everybody listening in to Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at BuzzJohnNabors for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.